Welcome to our channel, Choose to Travel. My name is Chantal and this is Harry. Usually we're posting videos about our travel experiences, but lately we haven't been traveling as much. So instead, we're going to be doing different videos about our adult life in Singapore.
For any of those weeks that we aren't traveling, just so we can still give you some perspective on what life is like here in Singapore.
So for today, we're going to be talking about our experience with applying for Singapore Permanent Resident. But the way we're going to approach this video is by actually using AI.
AI is such a big topic these days. You can't hear enough of it. There's so many different options now even. And we decided to ask Gemini. So Gemini is Google's newest AI chat tool. And we basically put in some questions about what is the application process? Why should you apply? What are pros and cons around it? So we're gonna compare that with
our own experiences.
Yep. Let's dive in.
So for the main reason, it would be that we really want to stay in Singapore.
In order to stay in Singapore, you either have to be a citizen, a permanent resident, or have a work visa. We had work visas, but I think there's a little bit of insecurities around not knowing if we can keep our jobs or if we find other opportunities, because as soon as you lose your work visa, you basically have to be out of the country. I think for us, it's like 30 days, in fact. After you lose a job, you need to find a job or be out of the country. So with permanent residence, obviously, we don't have to worry about that.
AI's response was pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's all about just the security of knowing that you can live here. And it mentioned a few things, which are very true. Why do we like it here, right? We love the quality of life. We love the ability to travel.
Food.
100%, the food is amazing. So yeah, spot on, Gemini.
First thing it said was to compile all your necessary information. All the documents, forms, very, very detailed information that you definitely need to make sure you have on hand. It also said to make sure to check out the ICA website for more information.
ICA website is definitely what I would recommend as well, because it is a very straightforward process, I would say. Like, as long as you follow the steps, you should be okay with applying.
The documents needed are pretty thorough, including needing our education, our primary, secondary school, which for me, my elementary school is gone.
Same.
And it even asked for our parents' education. Where did they go to school? Their past jobs.
So even religious background and languages. It took us a while to get our marriage certificate, getting our transcripts even from university.
Our detailed grades.
So it's very, very thorough. There are some things I think are worth making sure you are aware of. And in fact, AI did mention this as well. One is the documentations you provide should be in English. For us, you remember what?
Our graduation, our
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
Our actual degree is not in English, it's in Latin.
And that's because we went to a Jesuit or Catholic university, and it requires an English certificate. So that's one of the things you do need to submit. And for us, we had the attorney draft up a letter basically saying this should be served as proof. Otherwise, you have to get it translated, like officially translated and notarized. There is a scheme that you can go through, which is, I think, called the Professional Technical Skilled Worker Scheme, PTS, I think. For this, I actually went directly to my employer and basically told them, look, we're interested in becoming permanent residents. Is this something that you can help us out with? And I would recommend maybe checking with your employer, because for us, we had the ability to use our in-house attorney essentially to help us with the application process.
So it was still the same steps for us. We just had the lawyer who kind of kept us in check and made sure all of our documents were together.
And I guess we saved a little bit of time because we didn't actually have to fill out the forms. They did it for us, and then we just provided all the documentation.
Keep in mind that it's no guarantee that you will get approved the first time you apply. Gemini also pointed this out. Even if you tick all the boxes on the checklist, have everything in order, it's a matter of a waiting game, and you might need to apply more than once. And for us, we applied in August, and we waited until April the next year to hear back on our approval.
It's a long waiting game, and I have friends and colleagues who waited even more than a year to hear back. But I've been told that sometimes if you do get rejected, they typically will do that sooner than later. So that means you don't have to wait as long to then reapply. There are some people who apply 2-3 times, still get rejected. But honestly, if it's something you're looking to do, I would just continue to go for it. The unfortunate thing is there's no real transparency around the specific requirements on approving. There is a certain quota system, so if you do have tons of people applying 1 year, the chances are going to be less likely. There's certain racial backgrounds that they need to adhere to ensure that there's a balance of certain racial backgrounds here. They'll probably look into your socioeconomic contributions for Singapore.
If you're a young married couple and you're thinking about having kids in Singapore, that could be an advantage for your application to becoming PR.
Yeah, it's just, there's a lot to consider. There's no guarantees, but that's exactly what Gemini said and what Chantal said.
One thing is education. If you have kids in Singapore, they will have better access to the public education system here. The way it works will be Singapore citizens get priority, and then PR children will get the next priority, followed by foreign families.
Which means that they might have to shell out additional money for international schools. And the good thing is, this actually wasn't one of those initial pros that we were thinking about, but Gemini highlighted that, and that's very true.
Another benefit is with our careers. When we first moved to Singapore, I was on a dependence pass, which limited the job opportunities because certain companies have to follow a quota on who they could hire. As PR, we no longer have that limitation, and it allowed me to expand my job opportunities.
They only are allowed to give certain number of visas and keep the balance of how many local citizens and permanent residents are allowed. And in fact now, you even as a DP, you need a letter of consent to be able to work or have some certain opportunities. One other is financial benefit, which is having access to a CPF or Central Provident Fund. It's essentially a scheme to help provide contributions towards an account, which usually you can't access until retirement, but it grows over time. Your employer also is required to contribute to it as well. So you can think of it as an increase in whatever you generally make in your salary. The idea of using this is you have 3 separate accounts. We won't go into details about it today. That could be another vlog actually around CPF, although it's a very complex topic, and honestly every time we look at our account, I'm like, I don't know where the money's going or what it's used for. But the idea is you can use it for medical purposes, so emergency situations, owning a home, that is definitely something we'll be talking about. So contributions to that can be used for mortgage. And yeah, just retirement, obviously. So that way you have a social security. That's kind of what we would use in the US to ensure that you have money after you stop working.
Speaking of housing, one big benefit of being a PR is having access to HDBs, which are government subsidized housing, which is going to be significantly cheaper than private condos.
If you were not a permanent resident or a citizen of Singapore, you can only have access to private condos, which is, housing is very expensive. One caveat though is, as permanent residents, first you have to wait 3 years after being a PR to be able to apply to purchase one. But the other thing is you can't buy a brand new HDB. You have to buy a resale property, which means the price will still be a bit more than when you buy it flat out, but at least it will still be cheaper than a private condo. One consideration that you need to have as being a permanent resident is tied to having your CPF or Central Provident Fund. And the reason why that should be a consideration is because your take-home salary actually won't be as much as it used to be with a employment pass or S-Pass. The reason for that, as I mentioned before, is because your employer will contribute to that fund, but in addition to that, you must take out a certain percentage out of your own paycheck. The maximum amount you can contribute is 20% of your paycheck, and I believe it will ramp up to that. But when you contribute 20% to it, your employer actually will pay 17% of your salary into that as well. So think of it as a boost of 17% in your salary, but each month your take-home salary will be 20% less.
Another thing that you have to consider, and for me was personally a con as PR, is the casino levy. If you want to go to the casino, to enter the casino as PR or citizen, you have to pay a $150 levy. And before we were PRs, we used to just stop by Marina Bay Sands Casino, go in, grab a water bottle, grab some milk tea or whatever, and then walk out. But we can't even do that unless we want to pay the $150 or $3,000 annual levy.
Yeah, so $3,000 is like an annual membership to the casino. The reason why they do this is because there are taxes, or like I think the nickname is sin taxes in Singapore. So they're basically trying to keep permanent residents and citizens from gambling and encouraging foreigners to spend money at the casinos to help boost the economy. It's actually a smart move.
It works.
But you know what? We've been hitting the arcades more often now because you still kind of get that, like, put some money in and barely earn enough tickets to get like a toy or like a tiny piece of candy, but it's still fun.
Yes.
Another consideration is national service. So national service is required for all male Singapore citizens and permanent residents if you are not an adult as a first generation who applied for permanent residence. So for us, that means I might be exempt, but if we have a male boy who then becomes a permanent resident or becomes a citizen, they would be required to serve. It honestly is not a bad thing. Like, it'll help build character. I mean, if anything, it delays you going into the workforce because I think it's a whole year that they have to serve and then ongoing up till the age of 40. Again, I won't go into details about this. This could be another option for us to talk about.
So Gemini was in line with the things that we thought about as considerations to becoming PR. One more thing that it did include was to remember to renew your PR status every 5 years.
Yeah, so you need to make sure you renew it. It's a very straightforward process. I think you can just do it online. But as part of that, you also need to make sure to renew your re-entry permit, which is called REP here. And that basically means that you're allowed to leave Singapore and then come back with your PR status maintained. If you left the country, your PR status expires, your re-entry permit expires, then you try and come back into Singapore, you will no longer be a permanent resident.
This brings an end to our video on why we applied, how to apply, and pros and considerations on becoming PR.
Now you've heard our experience, but on top of that, we now realize that AI, Gemini, kudos to you, ChatGPT probably does a good job as well, can help answer a lot of these questions or considerations. Like, they were pretty much spot on, and I think if anything, we just provided some anecdotal information.
If you're checking out those AI tools, but it hasn't answered all of your questions, feel free to contact us, leave a comment, leave a question.
I'm on Instagram as well, so at golferboyhc, drop me a direct message. I respond to pretty much everything. And if you're interested in this content, like we said earlier, we're gonna do this whole series of videos called Adulting in Singapore, pretty much when we're not traveling. So do keep an eye out, and if you do like travel content, do also consider subscribing. But I think right now, YouTube is using AI to tell you that this is a video that you might want to watch, and then here's a button for you to subscribe to our channel. Until next time.
Bye.